Who's my favorite student? Sadly, George, it's not you, it's Anne. The first few questions are more conceptual. So define acceleration, and then is acceleration a vector? Let's answer the second part. You do need to know the difference between a vector and a scalar. Now, normally on the old system, I would have repeated that several thousand times by now, but on the quarterly system, we picked up the pace. So scalars have magnitude only, vectors have magnitude and direction. So the question is, does the direction that you're accelerating make a difference? Does acceleration have a direction? Aiden is nodding, so 1 mark if you said yes. Define acceleration. I said changing velocity. You could have actually done an equation and said, because we defined it as that. By the way, what's change in anything? Alessio. No, what's change in any? I know it's the symbol for change in is delta, but when I say change in or delta, what's change in anything? It's on your green sheet. I may go back to Kiana because she's the one I kept hammering on it. But Deegan thinks he knows. Yeah. So look up. This is how I defined acceleration with you about a week and a half ago. What's change in anything? So you're saying that change in I could write as V final minus V initial. Deegan, isn't that VF equals VI plus AT in disguise when I rewrite it for A? It's still there. So it's not actually anything new. Did anybody say anything different for acceleration? They would want to know if they're right. Yeah. Yes. The best definition would be the rate at which velocity is changing per time. By the way, anytime you say the rate at which, it's assumed you're talking about time, unless you're in some bizarre units, and then you would mention the bizarre units. But if you say the rate at which velocity is changing, a physicist would say, oh yeah, with respect to time. Duh, we know that. Yep, I would take that. Anybody else? Okay. An accelerating body at all times must have a positive velocity. Can you be accelerating and have a negative velocity? So A is wrong. B, can you be accelerating and not have an increasing speed? How? You can have a decreasing speed. Accelerating doesn't mean speeding up or speeding down, it just means changing. So, in fact, you know what? D. And remember, there's 3 ways to change your velocity, Owen. Change your speed, change your direction, or both. So that's the technical 3rd way. And what I taught you last day, if you're accelerating, that means there's also an unbalanced force, and that's going to be important in the next unit. Number 3 is a question that I don't like and I do like. And what I mean by that is for part C and part D. For some of these, you can convince me of more than one answer. First of all, if your velocity is positive, I think forwards, and your acceleration is positive, I think forwards. Is your speed increasing or decreasing? I think for A, I would say your speed is increasing. I'm going to abbreviate, and I'm going to use I for increasing. I'm so glad you made it. A little late, but I'm so glad you made it.
Sorry, I'm late.
We're marking quiz 4 if you want to get it out, and your green sheet. What if your velocity is positive going forwards, and your acceleration is negative, accelerating backwards, slowing down? What if your velocity is negative and your acceleration is positive? So velocity is negative, again, Annika, I think backwards. And acceleration is positive, so we're going backwards, but we're accelerating forwards. If we're in a car that's going backwards but accelerating forwards, are we speeding up or slowing down? So the good news is one of those is right. If we're in a car that's going backwards, but the acceleration direction is forwards, what will be happening to your speed? So if you said, I'm okay with that, how could that also be thought of as increasing? Aiden. Let's suppose that you're at negative 10 meters per second. Nice round number, negative 10. And you're accelerating forward at positive 2 meters per second. So after 1 second, you're at negative 8. Is negative 8 a bigger number or a smaller number than negative 10? Technically, negative 8 is bigger than negative 10. Okay? Wind currents out there, that's okay. No, I've got the windows open and we got a bit of a low pressure system here. So if you thought, oh, a negative number that's closer to 0 is bigger than a negative number that's further from 0, therefore increasing, I would take that as well. We would say you were slowing down, but from a purely number line, we would say, well, the numbers are getting bigger because they're getting closer to 0 from negative direction. What if your velocity is negative backwards and your acceleration is negative? You're speeding up going backwards, so you could say, well, my speed is increasing, but the negative numbers are getting further from 0. Technically, negative 30 is a smaller number than negative 20, and so you said if it was decreasing, I would live with that as well if you said that. So I'll take either answer for C and D. 1, 2, and 3, not going to be on your test. That was just more for conceptual stuff. 5 is good. A equals VF minus VI over T. I'm skipping some steps. I didn't do my DFIC listing because I want to get through this as fast as I can. But I would give you 1 mark if I saw that. And then I would give you a half mark for the numbers. As I was reading, Annika, I checked my units to make sure they were good. There will be 1 question on your test where I don't give you nice units. I either will give you hours for the time, minutes for the time, or kilometers per hour for the speed, and you'll have to convert them to seconds and meters. I'm not going to do that for a bunch of questions, but 1. Yeah, just pay attention. V final is 5. V initial is 25 divided by 8. You're going to get a negative answer. I can do this in my head. It's 20 over 8, which is 10 over 4, which is 5 over 2. Negative 2.5? Units. Good. It's worth memorizing what units go with what. I would give you a half mark for the numbers, half mark for the answer. If you left the negative off, I would take a half mark off. If you didn't put meters per second squared, I would take a half mark off. Number 6, a bus is moving at 30 meters per second. The driver steps on the brakes. They want the average acceleration. So again, I think I'm going to go VF minus VI over T. Peniel, you would have listed and done your DFIC approach, but I'm cutting corners a little bit here because I've done so many of these. What's V final? Zero. Stops. V initial 30, I'm going to get a negative acceleration again. Time is 6. Oh, I can do this in my head. Negative 5, yes? Meters per second squared. I wrote negative 5.0 because it's just a habit for me to go to 2 or 3 sig figs. If you said negative 5, I won't take marks off, but whatever. That's about a half a G. This would get your attention. You would probably get thrown forward a little bit against the bus seat in front of you. Especially because bus seats are typically fairly slippery, so there's not much holding you in place. Similar to the sleeping subway guy that we saw last day whose head kept moving forward. Something like that. Looks like number 7, they want me to find VF. I think I'm going to use VF equals VI plus AT. So VI is going to be 103 minus, A is negative 5. That's why I underlined slows down. I will do a slows down acceleration on your test, although I might be nice and put the negative there so you catch it, but I might leave the negative off. 7.5. 103 minus negative 0.5 times 7.5. No, not minus, Mr. Dewick. Plus. Geez, Dewick. That's a transcription error when I can't even read my own writing. Do you get 99.3? No? Yes? Am I wrong? I'm totally wrong. Because I put a point in there too, Mr. Dewick. I really watched that. Do you get 65.5? Yeah. Meters per second. Again, 1 mark, half mark,
That they got it wrong.
Number 8, they want me to find time. I think I'm going to use VF minus VI over A. It's going to be VF 10 minus 2 all over 3.5. It's going to be 10 minus 2 divided by 3.5. You get 2.28 seconds? Did I round off properly? 2.29 seconds, Mr. Dewick? 2.28, I'd take a half mark off, and I'd say learn to round off like I just did. Time is the one thing that we're looking at which will always be positive. So if you get a negative time, don't just chuck the negative and assume it's the right answer. It means you probably missed a hidden negative somewhere in your work. Go find it. I'd take that. What must your, VI equals VF minus AT, I believe. It's going to be 20 minus 3.2 times 3.3. Do you get 9.44?
Yes.
And that's meters per second. Riley, how many marks is number 10 worth? How many marks is number 9 worth? How many marks is number 8 worth? I wonder if number 10 is going to require an extra step. That's a little hint. That's typically if I'm giving you a question on a test, if you notice, oh, this one's worth a bit more, probably a multi-step question. I gave you a hint here. I would feel comfortable not giving you that hint on the test. So I would say to myself, it wants me to find how fast, it wants me to find VF. But if I listed my data, I would say, okay, VI is 0, T is 7.5, that 12, no, I already got T is 7.5, that 30, that's a V final, which they're asking me to find. You know what? I need something else. And so I would say to myself, I need to find the acceleration, which is 30 minus 0 all over 12 seconds. I can do that in my head. 30 over 12 divided by 6 divided by 6 is going to be 5 over 2. The acceleration is 2.5 meters per second squared, I believe. And now if I walk this over, I can plug and chug. It's going to be 0 minus 2.5 times 7.5. You get 18.8, 18.75, 18.8. 18.8 meters per second. It's not squared, Mr. Dewick. If you got 18.8, I would give you 3 out of 3. Otherwise, I would probably give you a half mark if I saw that equation. I would give you a half mark if I saw that, a half mark for finding the acceleration. I would probably give you a half mark for the numbers, and then 1 mark for the answer. I don't know, something like that-ish. Number 11. Dropped. What's VI if dropped? So I already know for number 11, VI is 0. I know A is negative 9.8. They want me to find VF. I think it's going to be VF equals AT. Why didn't I write VI plus AT? And I'm lazy. VI is 0. So it's going to be negative 9.8 times 2. Is the answer to A negative 19.6 meters per second? And VF is going to be negative 9.8 times 6. It's going to be negative 58.8 meters per second. 2 marks each. 1 mark for the equation, half mark for the numbers, half mark for the answer. How long? Oh, now it wants me to find a time. I'm again going to assume VI is 0. I know A is negative 9.8. I think I'm going to go T equals VF minus VI over A, although since VI is 0, I guess it's just going to be VF over A. So it's going to be negative 24.5 divided by negative 9.8. 2.5 seconds. And negative 63.7 divided by negative 9.8. 6.5 seconds. Number 13. Oh, how far? I guess it's asking me to find a D. Again, Annika, I'll assume dropped, so I'll assume VI is 0 since they didn't give me a velocity. I'll assume that. A is negative 9.8. I think I'm going to use D equals AT squared over 2. D equals a half AT squared. What happened to the VIT? 0, and I'm lazy. I'm also going to get a negative answer because this is actually giving me a displacement. And Ethan, I'm definitely ending up below from where I started. So if I get a negative answer, will I freak out? No, I'll relax. It's going to be negative 9.8 times 2 squared all over 2. I can do that in my head. 2 squared is 4 divided by 2 is 2. Negative 19.6 meters. And B, D equals AT squared over 2, negative 9.8 times 6 all over 2. 6 over 2 is 3. Negative 9.8 times 3 is going to be negative 29.4? No, I'm way off. Hang on. I'm wrong? Squared, Mr. Dewick. Squared. Thank you. That was terrible of me. 36 over 2 is 18. It's going to be negative 9.8 times 18. I might be able to do that in my head. It's going to be 180 take away 3.6. So it's going to be 175.4? 176.4. Negative. I'll go to 4 sig figs because I can. By the way I'm cheating, to multiply by 9.8, I times by 10, and then I deal with the 0.2 afterwards by subtracting. Anybody here been to the CN Tower? Did you you can do a walk on the outside? Did you? Okay. And now apparently what they've just added in the last couple of years, they can put you in a harness where the rope is on your back and let you lean forward all the way so that your feet are still on there, but you're in space looking straight down. I have jumped out of an airplane. I have jumped out of an airplane. I'd have to psych myself up to do that one, I think. So
And you have a fun like 20 seconds or whatever.
You have 20 seconds of free fall. It's a nice experience.
Thing that if you fall before you don't have a parachute, your body will you'll have a heart attack before you get out.
no.
No, you'll die horribly.
Your body goes into shock.
Yeah,
No.
you die before you
It really doesn't.
There's no way.
Your body tries to do everything possible to keep you alive. The last thing it's going to do is say, hi there, let's shut down so that there's no chance of us surviving. It won't. And it couldn't, because otherwise you're saying that your body would somehow know that a parachute was attached to you. Don't go into shock now. Only go into shock if it knows somehow there's no parachute attached to you. I'm thinking not. Yeah. First of all, it all depends. We have had people survive tremendous falls. The world record, there was a Russian airliner that had a bomb planted on board, and when it went off, a stewardess got sucked out from like 30,000 feet, and she did survive with many, many permanent injuries. She landed on a snowy mountainside, so there was some snow that cushioned her. Perhaps even she might have hit some fluffy-ish trees that were relatively fluffy compared to solid earth. and that might have cushioned her. And at an angle would help a little bit as well. There is also, we watched the Mythbusters Penny episode. There was the Empire State Building was hit by a plane in the late 1930s or early 1940s, and a woman in the elevator went crashing all the way down and did survive. But there we think the elevator, because it was in a small area, there was an air cushion pushing it up slightly because the air had to escape past. And we think the elevator cable was coiling underneath. And even though normally that cable is very rigid, because it was coiling, we think it might have acted somewhat like a spring as she hit there as well. That one's actually been studied because that's a pretty high height to drop in an elevator. And nowadays we have modern safety features so that if a cable cuts in an elevator, there are several fail safes. The elevator is not going to fall. So anyways, back to here. I wrote D equals AT squared over 2. Ethan, why didn't I write VIT? VI is 0. I got to get the T by itself. This one I'll often just show a little bit of rough work. Peniel, what's the A doing to the T squared? Adding, subtracting, multiplying, or dividing? So, yep. And then I put a 2 on the bottom, which means there's a 2 on top over here. The other one, some of you like, I think, Alessio, you prefer the 0.5 version. And so yours would look like this. T squared equals D over 0.5A. Those are identical equations, how to get rid of a squared. So I'm going to write T equals the square root of 2 times D over 8. Now you notice the other subtle thing that I did. I said I'm ending up below from where I started. D is negative. If I hadn't done that, if I hadn't caught that negative, I would have gone 2 times 533.3 divided by negative 9.8. And when I would try to take the square root, I'd get an error. I get a non-real answer. The universe would be saying to me, get real. And the reason is I've told the universe I'm accelerating down, but I ended up above from where I started. So I would then go back and check my work and say, oh, I bet you I missed a hidden negative. There it is. Square root of that, 10 point something, 10.4 seconds. Going back to your question, Deegan, this is also ignoring air resistance. Air resistance does play a reasonable role once you hit terminal velocity, and you tend to hit terminal velocity after about 20, 25 seconds, depending on what position you take. So, but this person would already start to not be accelerating at negative 9.8 instantly because air resistance would be building and building and building. We just don't have the math to model that right now. And units is seconds. VF, I'd be half tempted just to go like that because I have time sitting at me. So I might be tempted to go negative 9.8 times answer button. The answer is negative 102. Now that's using an answer to find an answer. So technically what I should have done is gone VF squared equals VI squared plus 2AD. How to get rid of a squared square root. And Ethan pointed out that VI is 0. So it's just going to be the square root of 2AD. Then I would go 2 times negative 9.8 times negative 533.3. This is that weird one again, though, where when you take the square root of both sides, 102 is not the right answer. There's also the negative root that my calculator will never give me. So if you said the answer was 102.2 or 102, I'd give you 1.5 out of 2. It is negative 102 meters per second. Okay. 15 was your curveball. Didn't cover it, didn't talk about it. I'm not going to put one like this on your test. But one of the things in Physics 12, I will always give kids a 1-mark multiple choice question that they've never seen before. Because in Physics 12, I want to teach you, what do you do when you don't know what to do? I can teach you that rather than have you figure that out the hard way in university. So, O and A. Can you read number 15 to me? Stop. First thing I need to figure out is, how do I figure out how many times bigger something is than something else? Oh, and if you have $10 If I have $30, how many times more do I have than you?
3.
Not 20. How would you take a 30 and a 10 and get a 3 as an answer? How would you take a 30 and a 10 and get an answer? I think you're right, but you just said divide by 10. I would like you to say a sentence that has the number 30 in it and the number 10 in it.
30 divided by 10.
I think what I'm going to do is find how far it falls in 10 seconds, find how far it falls in 1 second, and divide them. Is that okay? I'm going to call this in 1 second D1. I'm going to call the 10 second D10. See how clever that is? For both of them, the distance is going to be AT squared over 2, AT squared over 2. VIT dropped 0, I think. So I get negative 9.8 times 1 squared over 2. In 1 second, it's fallen negative 4.9 meters. I get negative 9.8 times 10 squared over 2. 10 squared is 100. Divided by 2 is 50. Negative 9.8 times 50 is negative 490. What? Divide them? $100 times further? Yep. How many of you figured that out and got that okay? That's good thinking. That's, way to just puzzle it out and not panic, and I can figure this out. In terms of part marks, I would probably do 1 mark if I saw that, 1 mark if I saw that, and then 1 mark for cluing in that how many times means you actually divide them. It's counterintuitive because times means multiply, but if I say how many times bigger, you're going to divide them to figure out how many times bigger. Right? Number 16. How fast? Looks like this is asking me to find a VF. It starts out parked from rest. So VI is 0. So I think I'm just going to go AT. It's going to be 1.1 times 6.5. I can do this in my head. I can do 1. It's going to be 7.16? No, 7.15. Yes? Meters per second.
Wait, is it negative? Because it's moving downhill.
So this is another question that I don't like the wording of, and I'm always hoping somebody asks. If you said downhill is negative, I would give you full credit. You would have let the acceleration be negative because it's downhill, and you would have got a negative velocity, which is downhill. If you said speeding up is positive, and so you said 1 point was going to be speeding up as it goes downhill, I would give you full credit for that. This question to me is not greatly worded because I'm not sure whether they want me to call it positive or negative. Good question. So if you let A be negative, you also got a negative answer for B, and I would give you full credit. They want how far. I think I'm going to use D equals... I think I'm going to use VF squared minus... No, I'm not, Mr. Dewick. I'm going to use VIT... Well, what's VI? 0. I'm going to use AT squared over 2. It's going to be 1.1, 6.5 squared over 2. Come on. Your calculator. There we go. 1.1 times 6.5 squared over 2. Did you get 23.2 meters? I would take negative. Riley, how many marks is number 17 worth? I bet you I'm going to have to find something in order to find something. Okay? I'll even do that, anticipating I'm going to have to find something. Looks like they want me to find T, and I think I'm going to go VF minus VI over A, because I know that VI is 0. I know that VF is 16. Oh, I don't know A. Wait a minute. I can find A by going VF minus VI over T, where VF is 9.9 all over 1.8. I can do that in my head. Divide by 9, divide by 9. It's going to be 11 over 2. Is it 6.5? Is A? No, 5.5, Mr. Duick. Carry the 1. And then I walk over here, and I'll get 16 minus 0 divided by 5.5. You get 2.9191, sorry, 2.90 repeating, or 2.91? And that's going to be seconds. If you got that, 3 out of 3. Otherwise, I would give you 1 mark if I saw that. I would give you a half mark if I saw that equation somewhere, half mark if I saw that equation somewhere, and a half mark for the answer. No, 1 mark for the answer. That adds to 3. What's its acceleration? VF minus VI over T, 48 minus 0 all over 12. Oh, it does say it's from rest. So 4.0, is that correct? B, how fast is the plane? Now I am going to have to use an answer to find an answer. There's just no way, no workaround. VF is going to be AT, VI plus AT, but VI is 0. It's going to be 4 times 16. It's going to be 64 meters per second. C, I noticed the time changed, so I can't use the 64. D is going to be AT squared over 2. It's going to be 4 times 15 squared all over 2. I can do that in my head. 15 squared is 225 times 2. 450?
Yes.
Meters. Number 19 slows down. I'm expecting a negative acceleration. I won't get nervous. I'll be relaxed if I get a negative acceleration. I think I'm going to go A equals VF minus VI. Yep. All over T. It's going to be VF 10 minus VI all over 3.25. Do you get negative 1.54? Meters per second squared. Take a half mark off if you're missing the negative. Number 20 is also going to be a negative acceleration because the cyclist is being brought, the motorcycle rider is being brought to rest. It's going to be VF squared minus VI squared all over 2D. 0 squared minus 42 squared all over 2 times 5.7. Did you get negative 154.7, negative 155?
Yes.
How many G's is that? I will ask you at least once on your test to convert an acceleration into G's. How do I convert meters per second squared into G's? And divide by positive 9.8 because that's the magnitude, that's how big. So this person was pulling just under 16 G's. Are they dead? Probably not, especially assuming they were wearing a helmet and a racing suit with leather. Are they injured? Probably. It all depends. If they were lucky sliding feet first, and if when they hit the hay bale they were also able to cushion with their knees somewhat, yeah, still going to the hospital for a checkup no matter what. Number 21, I have a video of this, and we'll see that in this video something goes wrong. So on August 19th, 2015, the world record was set by cliff jumping from a height of 58.8 meters into water. A, how fast? Why can't I use AT? What's B asking me to find? No, what's B asking me to find? Time. So why can't I use time to solve part A? I don't know it. Now, if you cheated and found time and then worked back, I would give you full marks, but I would say be careful. I think here I'm going to use VF squared equals VI squared plus 2AD. I didn't bother writing the VI squared because I'm pretty sure on a cliff jump your initial speed is 0 because you're just stepping off. How to get rid of a squared? So it's going to be the square root of 2 times negative 9.8. Spot the mistake. What did I do wrong? Because I'm ending up below from where I started from. So 2 times negative 9.8 times negative 58.8. Square root of that. 33.9. Spot the mistake.
Negative.
Okay, my calculator will not tell me that this is a negative answer. I know down is negative meters per second. So 1 mark for that, half mark for the numbers, half mark for the answer. If you missed the negative, half mark off. By the way, just out of curiosity, times by 3.6. Hit the water at about 122 kilometers per hour. B, time. I'm going to use D equals AT squared over 2 because I know A and I know D. T is going to be 2 times D over A square root, or if you're a Lessio, it's going to be D over 0.5A square root. That's fine. Square root of 2, negative 58.8, negative 9.8. Oh, I got a negative in front there. That's silly. It's going, how can I get a negative here? And then square root of that. You get 3.46. That's ignoring air resistance. So with air resistance, probably in the air for a little bit longer. Suppose the water took 3.5 meters to bring the jumper to a stop. What's the deceleration? What's this question asking me to find? Yeah. So what's this question asking me to find? Yeah. I think here, George, I'm going to let down be positive and up be negative, and that way I'll get a negative acceleration. But if you let down be negative, we'll get the same magnitude, and I'll talk about that. But I'm going to let the 3.5 be positive for now. I know VF was 0 because it says bring to a stop. That's only 2 things. Can I use A equals negative 9.8 in the water? Okay. What's VI? My answer from A? Oh. Now, if I really, really wanted to be fussy, I could go 2 times negative 9.8 times negative 58.8 square root answer button. Oh, geez, I botched that, Mr. Dewick. Square root answer button. And now I've got this stored exactly on my calculator. Oh, times by negative 1. But if you use negative 33.9, that's fine. This is just going to be a little off on the decimals. So I guess I can go A equals VF squared minus VI squared all over 2D. It's going to be 0 squared minus negative 33.9 squared all over 2 times 3.5. 0 squared minus answer button squared all over 2 times 3.5. Now this is going to give me a negative answer because I'm decelerating even though I'm accelerating upwards because the water is slowing me down. If you let down be negative and up be positive, you would have a positive accelerations. I'd take either. Negative 165 meters per second squared. D. How many G's did the jumper experience part 1 while in free fall? Yep. George, loud and proud.
1G.
Yep. Gravity. While being stopped by the water, divide by 9.8. I'm going to ignore the negative. If you included the negative in your answer, that's fine. But it looks like about 17 G's. Is that owie? Is that death? Probably not. So I got a video of this. Let's see how accurate we are. Put your pencils down, look up.